Do you struggle with a lot of negative feelings, frustration, anger, sadness, depression? The key to dealing with those feelings is in your thoughts. And that's what today's Facebook Live, Coffee with Coach Ted, is about. How do you deal with those pesky and unpleasant negative feelings? So welcome to Coffee with Coach Ted. Good morning. I am Coach Ted. Glad to be here with you today. So the material I want to talk about today comes from a guy named David Burns and a book called Feeling Good about cognitive therapy. And his basic premise is that our thoughts determine our feelings. Our feelings do not come from some outside force, the events in our lives. Generally we don't feel something directly because of what's happened. We think about what's happened, and how we think about it determines about how we feel about it. And if we're thinking in some kind of negative way, that generates negative feelings like depression, anxiety, fear. So the way to handle those negative feelings is by looking at how you're thinking, and then having some ways of dealing with that. And Dr. Burns talks about what he calls distorted thinking. It's distorted thinking that causes those negative feelings, those negative emotions. If we're thinking clearly and therefore we're seeing clearly, we're probably not going to feel negatively. So he outlines 10 different distortions of feelings, and I'm going to talk about a few of them briefly, and talk again briefly about a technique you can use, and then I'll give you some links to resources that you can learn more about this. Okay, so just checking the clock. All or nothing thinking, or black and white thinking. It's either good or it's bad. It's black or it's white. That's what all or nothing thinking is. And it leaves out all the gray in between, which is in fact where most things lie. So if a situation falls short of being perfect, all or nothing thinking says it was terrible. It was a total failure. Where in fact, it was somewhere in between. You know, there was things that went well and things that maybe didn't go so well. That's all or nothing thinking, or black and white thinking. Another is overgeneralization. We see a single negative event as a never-ending pattern. And we use words such as always or never. I'm never going to find a job. I always screw up. Or you never tell me. You're always complaining to me. This is overgeneralization. And of course, nothing is always or nothing is never. Again, it's in between, but this is the distortion. Overgeneralization. Emphasizing the negative. Again, it's not seeing the gray, it's seeing however well you did with something, what you notice is the part that wasn't perfect, the part that didn't go just the way you wanted to. And that's what you focus in on, the negative part. And of course, then you feel negative feelings about it. You feel upset at yourself for not doing it perfectly. And you're totally ignoring the parts that went well. The opposite is discounting the positive. Again, it's like seeing what didn't go right and ignoring all the good stuff. You tell yourself it was a fluke, or it wasn't good enough, and it just takes all the joy out of life. So again, that's discounting the positive. And then the last one to talk about is emotional reasoning. You think that your emotions, your negative emotions, are a reflection of reality. So I feel guilty, therefore I must be a rotten person. I feel angry, so you must be doing something to me. So again, that's emotional reasoning. Now there are 5 more, and this isn't a lesson in cognitive therapy. This is giving you some examples that you can use and maybe interest in looking further into it. So what do you do? How do you deal with this? So again, in Dr. Burns's book, Feeling Good, and this is the book, if you can see that. He gives a technique called the 3-column technique. By the way, give me a side. How do I know about all this? Well, quite a few years ago, when I was struggling with depression, I did a cognitive therapy group, and that's where I learned about cognitive therapy and about this material and about this technique I'm about to tell you about. But I found it very, very helpful. And this technique, you draw 3 columns on a piece of paper. And in the left-hand column, you write down all the negative thoughts that you're aware of, what Dr. Burns calls ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. So thoughts like, I'll never get a job. Nobody's going to hire me. I'm not qualified for this kind of position. My wife never tells me she loves me. Always harping at me. Whatever those negative thoughts are, you write those down in the left-hand column. All of them. You just kind of keep digging to come up with 8, 10, 12, however many you can come up with. And in the center column, you write down what's the distortion. Now, I'm going to give you a link to some material, a website that's going to give you all the distortions that David Burns talks about. This is helpful, but it's not necessary for the technique. But knowing it is helpful to realize this is all or nothing thinking, or this is overgeneralization, or this is emotional reasoning. And then in the third column, right-hand column, you write down a rational response to each of those negative thoughts. So if your thought is, I'm never going to find a job, a rational response would be, well, that's a possibility that I won't find a job, but it's more likely that if I keep working at my job search, I keep networking, I keep talking to people about the kind of job I'm looking for, I keep looking online for openings, and I send in resumes, and I see if I can talk to the hiring manager, and if I need some help, I go find somebody who does career counseling or job search coaching that can maybe help me with my job search. If I keep doing those things, the likelihood is I'm going to find a job. Or if I say, you know, my wife keeps harping at me for things I'm doing wrong and so on, and what is the rational response? Well, sometimes she complains to me that I, you know, forgot to take out the trash or didn't empty the dishwasher, but that's only once in a while. Most of the time, she's very sweet to me. She tells me how much she loves me. She tells me how much she appreciates the things that I do around the house. Again, a rational response, and it offsets that negative thinking. It can help shift how you feel about it. And if you do this technique, it can take 15 minutes, it could take 30 minutes, it could take 45 minutes. But if you really do it, when you're done, you will feel better. It will help alleviate, it will help those the negative feelings you've been having. And if you do that on a regular basis, it'll then help you become much more aware of those automatic negative thoughts, and where you actually can, as soon as you recognize them, you'll notice what your thought, you know, what the distortion is, and you can come up with in your mind actually a rational response. But writing it down is really helpful, certainly in the beginning. So that's a very quick overview of the cognitive therapy approach to dealing with negative emotions and negative thinking. I really want to encourage you to look further into it. It is a very powerful way of approaching this issue for yourself. So that's the topic for today. To close out, I want to acknowledge that the Patriots won yesterday. They're now in the finals of the AFC. As some of you know, have watched me before, I'm somewhat of a sports fan. I'm in Boston, so how can I not love the Patriots? And then also I want to let you know about, if you're not a member of my Facebook group, Live Fully with ADHD, I invite you to check it out. I'll put a link to it in a comment below. We've got about almost 220 people in it. People share what's going on with them. I pose questions that people answer. I answer questions that people pose. People support each other. It's a really growing community of support. If you have any comments or questions about what I've been talking about today, please post them in a comment. Or if there's a topic you'd like to see me address, or a question you'd like to see me answer in a future Coffee with Coach Ted, please do post it here. If you'd like to connect further with me, type #connect in a comment, and I'll be in touch, and we can set up a time to talk. And finally, if you're watching this as a replay, please type in #replay so I know you were here. So finally, keep an eye out. I may be changing the time for Coffee with Coach Ted. I'm thinking about doing it a little bit later in the morning, maybe early afternoon, so people on the West Coast can be present, not so early in the morning, yet people across the pond over in England and Europe can also be watched live. It's always fun to have people here live, and where I can interact with people. So anyway, that's it for today. Have a great day and a great week. This is Coach Ted signing off. Again, have a great day. Bye-bye.